Horses are noble creatures. For over 5,000 years they've stood beside us, bravely carrying our ancestors into battle, pulling our plows through harsh soil, and racing at full speed across vast lands. They charged through arrows and cannon fire, never flinching. They carried messages through war-torn fields when no one else could. Many never returned home, yet they gave us their strength, their speed, and their trust, asking for almost nothing in return. That's why we still call them noble animals, partners, friends.
The frontier line. I opened my eyes and the world felt completely wrong. Everything was too big. The ceiling above me stretched endlessly high, and the light pouring in from somewhere felt blinding. My body, it wasn't mine. These arms were tiny, pudgy, and weak. When I tried to lift one, it barely moved, trembling with the effort. My legs kicked uselessly beneath a soft blanket. Panic hit me like a wave. This wasn't a dream. I could feel the warmth of the cloth against my skin, hear distant voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize. My heart, this small, fragile heart, was racing. The last thing I remembered from my old life was the screech of tires on wet asphalt, blinding headlights rushing toward me, and then nothing, just darkness. Now I was here, trapped inside the body of a baby. I tried to speak, to say anything, but all that came out was a thin, pathetic cry. The sound shocked me. It was so helpless. Soft footsteps approached. A woman's face appeared above me. Young, kind, with gentle eyes and hair tied back simply. She cooed something in that unfamiliar language and lifted me carefully into her arms. Her warmth was comforting, even as my mind reeled. Mother, I realized. This was my mother in this new life. As she rocked me gently, my thoughts raced. I still had all my memories, every single one. My childhood in the old world, school, work, the endless rush of modern life, and my love for horses. That part of me felt strangely vivid now, sharper than everything else. Why was I here? Was this some kind of second chance? A punishment? I had no answers, only questions spinning in this tiny, helpless head. Days blurred together after that. I quickly learned I had almost no control over this body. Eating, sleeping, crying. These were the only things I could do. The frustration was maddening. I knew how to drive a car, how the internet worked, the entire history of warfare. Yet I couldn't even hold my own head up properly. I spent long hours staring at the wooden beams of the ceiling, listening to the sounds of this new world. There were no cars, no electronics, just the distant clucking of chickens, the lowing of cattle, and occasionally, the sound of hooves. That sound always made something inside me stir. At night, when the house grew quiet, I would lie awake thinking. This world felt simpler, rougher. The air smelled cleaner, the nights were darker. Whatever this place was, it wasn't the earth I had known. And yet deep down, a strange sense of purpose was already forming. If I really had been given this second life, I wasn't going to waste it. I would grow strong. I would learn everything this world had to offer, especially when it came to horses. Because even now, as a helpless infant, I could already feel it. That old connection, that quiet respect I had always carried for those noble creatures. Somehow, I knew they were going to be important in whatever lay ahead. For now, though, all I could do was wait, observe, and survive each day inside this fragile new body. And so, with the patience I never had in my first life, I began my second one. By the time I was 6 years old, the memories of my previous life had settled into something quieter, though they never truly faded. I had grown used to this small body, this simpler world. The city of Eastmere lay in the center of endless grassy plains, where the wind always carried the scent of horses. Here, riding wasn't a hobby. It was part of who we were. That morning, the whole village felt alive with excitement. It was the day Kane and I would have our first real ride. Brock, already 8 and full of himself, had been riding for nearly 2 years and never let us forget it. "You're both gonna scream like little girls," Brock teased, sitting tall on his chestnut mare with a smug grin. "Just don't fall off and make me look bad in front of the grown-ups." Kane stood beside me, looking pale. His fingers twisted nervously at the edge of his shirt. It's not that high, right?" he whispered. I stayed quiet. In my old world, I had ridden a few times as an adult, but standing here at 6 years old, looking up at a living, breathing horse, I felt a strange mix of excitement and nerves. This body had never done this before. My father approached, leading 2 calm, steady horses, a gentle gray gelding for Kane and a quiet bay mare for me. He gave us both an encouraging smile. "Kane, you're first." My father lifted Kane carefully onto the brown horse's back. Kane grabbed a fistful of mane with both hands, his legs barely reaching halfway down the horse's sides. He sat there frozen, eyes wide. Brock burst out laughing. "Look at him! He's shaking like a leaf." "Quiet, Brock," my father said sternly, though there was amusement in his voice. He adjusted Kane's position and handed him the reins. "Just breathe. Feel the horse's warmth. He won't hurt you." After a few tense moments, Kane's shoulders relaxed a little. A shaky smile appeared on his face. I'm actually sitting on a horse." My father turned to me next. "Your turn, Rhett." He lifted me easily onto the bay mare's back. The moment I settled into place, something inside me clicked. The height, the warmth of the horse beneath me, the subtle shift of muscle. It felt strangely familiar, even in this young body. My hands instinctively found the right grip on the reins. My father noticed. He raised an eyebrow. "You look comfortable up there, son. Almost like you've done this before." I just smiled. If only he knew. Brock rode up beside us on his mare, still showing off. "Watch this." He clicked his tongue and his horse moved forward at a smooth walk. He circled us once, sitting tall and proud. "See? This is how you really ride." Kane looked at me with wide eyes. He makes it look so easy. My father gave both our horses a gentle tap, and we began moving at a slow walk. The motion felt strange at first, this rolling, living movement beneath me. But after a few steps, my body adjusted. A quiet thrill ran through me. Even at 6, I could already tell. This was where I belonged. We rode in a wide circle around the training field while Brock kept talking non-stop. "When you're older, we'll race across the plains. I'll beat both of you, obviously." Kane, slowly gaining confidence, laughed for the first time. "You're so full of yourself, Brock." I didn't say much. I was too busy listening to the mare's steady breathing, feeling the rhythm of her steps. For the first time since waking up in this world, I felt truly alive. As we rode, my father walked alongside, watching me closely. There was a thoughtful look in his eyes, like he could sense something different about me. But he said nothing. By the time we finished our short ride and my father helped me down, my legs felt like jelly. Kane was grinning ear to ear, his fear completely gone. Even Brock had stopped teasing us quite so much. As we walked back toward the village, Brock threw an arm around both our shoulders. "Welcome to the Riders Club, babies. You both did all right. For beginners." Kane and I looked at each other and smiled. That day, something important had shifted. Sitting on that horse for the first time, I knew with complete certainty that horses would play a major role in my future, in this world, and I couldn't wait to see where they would take me. 2 years had passed since that first ride. I was 8 now, and life had found a steady rhythm. Kane, Brock, and I each had our own horses. Mine was the same calm bay mare from that first day. We had named her Whisper. She had become my constant companion. Father had been selected to join a large merchant caravan heading to Central City for the annual horse fair. It was a major event where breeders from across the Eastern Territories came to trade bloodlines and make deals. He decided to bring me along. "It's time you saw more of the world," he told me. The caravan was nearly 40 wagons long, protected by hired guards. We left Eastmere at dawn, the sound of hooves and creaking wheels filling the morning air. The 3-day journey was eye-opening. As we traveled the old Imperial Road, I noticed things the adults seemed to ignore. We passed several abandoned farms, their fields overgrown but their stables still solid. Later, we rode past 2 old stone forts, both empty and crumbling, yet their walls looked strong enough to repair. That evening, as we made camp, I rode up beside Father while he tended to our horses. "Father, why are those forts empty?" I asked. "And why are so many good farms just left to rot?" He was quiet for a moment, tightening a strap on his saddle. "Those were built in the days of the old empire," he said. "Back then, the emperor's roads were safe. Trade flowed freely between the city-states. Messengers rode day and night under imperial protection. But when the empire fell, everything changed." He looked toward the darkening eastern hills. "The dark elf tribes came down from the wilds. They're fast, ruthless raiders. They strike caravans, burn farms, and vanish back into the wilds before anyone can respond. Without the Empire's armies, the roads became too dangerous. Many families gave up their land and moved closer to the cities. The forts lost their garrisons and fell into ruin." The next night, while the men sat around the campfire, I stayed close and listened. Several merchants were angry, their voices low but heated. "Another shipment lost," one grumbled. "That's the 3rd time this year. My goods never reached Nishigani." "It's not just goods," another added. "Letters, contracts, even important news. Half the time they never arrive. The old imperial roads are gone. Now we rely on slow caravans or greedy messengers who vanish with your coin." I sat very still, my mind racing. Abandoned stables, repairable forts, a broken mail system between city-states. The pieces fit together too perfectly. The Pony Express. The idea from my old world burned bright in my head. Relay stations every 15 to 20 miles. Fresh horses. Riders who only carried the mail and rode hard. It could work here. By the time we reached Central City 2 days later, the idea was no longer just a spark. It had taken root. Walking through the massive horse market surrounded by hundreds of fine animals and ambitious traders, I felt something click into place. This world needed fast, reliable communication, and I knew exactly how to give it to them. I was only 8 years old, but I already knew what my future would be. The horse fair in Central City was louder and busier than anything I had ever seen. Thousands of horses, hundreds of traders, and the smell of leather and dust filled the air. My father, Wyatt Colton, moved through the crowd like he owned it. With his long hair, fringed buckskin jacket, and loud laugh, people always noticed him. That evening, we sat by our campfire, away from the noise. I knew this was my moment. "Father, I've been thinking about something," I started. Wyatt raised an eyebrow, poking at the fire with a stick. "That's never a small thing with you. Speak your mind, boy." I took a deep breath and let it all pour out. The world needs a proper way to send messages between the city-states. The merchants here are losing fortunes because letters and packages never arrive. The old imperial roads are too dangerous, and the dark elf raiders make everything worse. But I have an idea. I told him everything. Relay stations every 15 miles. Fresh horses at each stop. Riders who only carried mail and rode as fast as possible, switching horses instead of resting. I explained how we could use the abandoned farms and old forts we saw on the way here, how we could rebuild them cheaply. Wyatt stared at me for a long time, completely silent. "You're 8 years old," he finally said, half laughing, half serious, "and you're telling me you want to rebuild the entire imperial postal system?" "Not the whole empire," I replied boldly. "Just the eastern route first, from Eastmere to Central City. Then we expand." He shook his head, but I could see the idea had caught him. Wyatt Colton loved big, reckless ideas. It was in his blood. On the journey home, I didn't let up. Every time we passed one of the abandoned farms, I pointed it out. "That one has good stables, only needs a roof." When we rode past the old forts, I made my case again. That one could house riders and horses easily. By the second day, Wyatt had stopped laughing at me. Now he was asking questions. How many stations would we need? How many riders? How fast could a letter actually travel? I answered every question with confidence, even when I was guessing. My father grew quieter the closer we got to Eastmere. I could see the wheels turning in his head. On the final night before we reached home, he sat across from me by the fire, studying me with a strange look. "You're not like other boys, Rhett. That much has always been clear." He leaned forward, the firelight dancing across his face. "This idea of yours, it's dangerous. It'll take years and more money than we have right now." He paused, then gave me a small, crooked smile. "But I didn't raise a coward. So here's my offer. I'll start putting money aside. We'll buy good, fast horses when we can. I'll teach you everything I know about horses and trading. And on your 16th birthday, if you still believe in this mad idea, I'll give you everything I've saved. You'll have your chance." My heart was pounding. 16th birthday. That was 8 years away. I looked my father straight in the eyes and answered with every bit of boldness I had. 8 years from now, the Colton Frontier Line will be running. Wyatt laughed loudly, the sound echoing into the night. "Light help us all," he said, shaking his head. "I think I just made a deal with an 8-year-old madman." 5 years had passed since that night by the campfire with my father. I was 13 now, taller, stronger, and more restless than ever. The idea of the Pony Express had never left my mind. It had only grown stronger. One warm afternoon, the three of us rode out to our secret spot, a grassy clearing beside a small waterfall that cascaded down into a crystal pool. This was where we always came when we wanted to be alone. The sound of falling water had covered our secrets for years. We let our horses graze while we sat on the flat rocks near the water's edge. Brock was skipping stones across the pool, trying to beat his own record. Kane sat quietly chewing on a stalk of grass. I figured it was time. "I've got something big to tell you two," I said. Brock turned immediately, always hungry for excitement. "Finally! You've been acting strange for months. Spit it out." I told them everything. The abandoned relay stations, the broken mail system between the city-states, the riders changing horses every 15 miles, how we could cut delivery times from weeks down to just days. When I finished, Brock's eyes were practically glowing. "Rhett, that's the best thing I've ever heard," he said, grinning like an idiot. "You're telling me I could get paid to ride horses as fast as I want every single day. Sign me up right now." Kane, as expected, was much more cautious. He stared at me with narrowed eyes. "You want to ride straight through raider territory, at night, with nothing but letters?" He shook his head. "Dark elves would cut you down before you even saw them. And you really think your father's going to bet everything he has on this?" "I know it's dangerous," I admitted, "but that's why we do it together, the three of us." Brock jumped up, too excited to sit still. "Think about it, Kane. We'd be legends, the fastest riders in the Eastern Territories. Girls would write songs about us." Kane groaned and rubbed his face. "You're both going to get me killed one day, you know that?" There was a long silence broken only by the roar of the waterfall. Eventually, Kane sighed deeply, the same sigh he always made when he knew he was losing. If I say no, you two are just going to do it anyway and get yourselves killed, aren't you? Probably, I said honestly. Kane looked between Brock's manic grin and my determined face. He threw his hands up in defeat. Fine, I'm in. But only because someone needs to keep you two alive. Brock whooped loudly and tackled Kane into a headlock while I laughed. The three of us roughhoused by the waterfall like we'd done since we were little. When we finally calmed down, the three of us stood together, looking out over the water. So it's settled then, I said. When I turn 16, we start building the frontier line. The three of us. Together. Brock punched his fist into his palm. Hell yes. Kane just muttered, I'm gonna regret this so much. But even he couldn't hide the small smile forming on his face. As we rode home that evening, I felt something settle in my chest. The dream was no longer just mine. It belonged to all three of us now. By the time I turned 14, I could no longer sit still. The vision of the frontier line had grown into an obsession. Every night I lay awake thinking about routes, distances, and relay stations. I was tired of waiting. One bright spring morning, I rode out to meet Brock and Kane at the waterfall. The moment I jumped off my horse, the words came rushing out. We're not waiting until I'm 16, I told them. We're starting now, today. Brock grinned instantly. Kane just closed his eyes like he was already regretting his life choices. I told them about the abandoned farm we had passed years ago on the way to Central City. The one with the solid stone house and large stable, just 14 miles east of Eastmere. It was the perfect first relay station. We fix it up ourselves, I said, my voice full of excitement. We repair the roof, clean the stable, fix the well, and make the house livable. If we can get the first station working, the rest will be easier to believe in. Brock was immediately hooked. I'm in. When do we start? Kane folded his arms. You do realize we're talking about months of hard work, right? And we're supposed to be doing this in secret? Weekends and early mornings, I replied. We'll tell our parents we're just going riding together. We'll bring tools little by little. 2 days later, we began. The first few trips were brutal. We carried hammers, nails, saws, and rope on our horses. The roof was in terrible shape. We spent 3 full weekends just pulling out rotten wood and patching holes. Brock proved to be surprisingly good with his hands, while Kane kept careful track of everything we needed. As the weeks passed, the old farm slowly began to transform. The stable went from a home for rats and birds to a clean, usable space for 12 horses. We dug out the old well and got it working again. We even repaired part of the stone wall around the property. One golden evening, after months of secret labor, the three of us stood in the middle of the yard, exhausted and filthy, staring at what we had accomplished. The house had a new roof. The stable was solid. The well worked. It looked like a real station. We actually did it, Kane said, sounding genuinely shocked. This place is actually usable. Brock wiped sweat from his forehead and laughed. Our first station, boys. The frontier line is officially open for business, even if nobody knows it yet. I looked around at the restored farm with a deep sense of pride. Then a new thought hit me. We still have nearly 2 years before my 16th birthday, I said slowly, turning to them. There's another abandoned farm further down the road, about 15 miles from here. If we started now... Kane's head snapped toward me. You've got to be kidding me. Brock's eyes lit up like fireworks. 2 stations? We could actually have a working route between Eastmere and the next town. I looked at both of them, feeling that familiar, reckless fire burning in my chest. What do you say? I asked. 1 more station before my father gives me the money? Kane groaned and looked up at the sky. I hate both of you so much. Brock threw his arm around Kane's shoulders, laughing. That's a yes! I smiled as I looked down the long, grassy road toward the next abandoned farm. We weren't just dreaming anymore. We were building the future, 1 station at a time. I turned 16 on a clear spring morning. The moment I stepped out of the house, I knew something was different. My father was already waiting for me in the yard, dressed in his usual buckskin outfit. He had that rare, proud look in his eyes. "Happy birthday, Rhett," he said. "Come with me. Got something to show you." He led me out past our main stables and over the hill. When we crested the rise, I stopped dead in my tracks. Spread across the large pasture were dozens of horses. Beautiful, strong, fast-looking animals. More horses than I had ever seen in one place that belonged to us. 52 head, Wyatt said, his voice thick with pride. All fast, all strong, all bought and raised quietly over the last 8 years. They're yours, son. Every last one of them. I was speechless. My reckless plan, the one I'd pitched to him when I was just 8 years old, he had actually believed in it. He had spent 8 years preparing for this day. "Father, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied, putting a heavy hand on my shoulder. "But that's not the only surprise." He turned me toward the east and pointed. "Those 3 stations you and your friends secretly fixed up, I've known about them for years. While you boys were out there hammering away, I was quietly fixing 4 more stations further down the line. We've already got 7 stations ready." My jaw dropped. Wyatt gave me a crooked smile. "You really thought you were being sneaky? I'm Wyatt Colton. Nothing happens on these plains without me hearing about it." He turned fully toward me, his expression becoming more serious. "We've done the easy part. The next step is the hard one. The 2 old imperial forts. They're much bigger projects. That's where the real money and time will go. But if we can get those forts running as major relay points, we'll have a real shot at making this work." He looked at the herd of horses grazing peacefully, then back at me. "So, Rhett Colton, you've got your horses. You've got 7 stations already repaired, and you've got 2 crazy friends who are probably waiting for you right now." Wyatt gave me a firm nod. "Now go build your frontier line." The months that followed my 16th birthday were some of the busiest of my life. Father didn't waste any time. The very next morning, 4 of us rode out together, me, Wyatt, Brock, and Kane. Behind us came a small caravan of wagons loaded with tools, lumber, nails, food, and supplies. We had one mission: finish the frontier line. For nearly 2 months, we lived on the road. We moved from station to station, repairing what still needed fixing and improving what we had already done years earlier. At each stop, we left behind a small team of men Father had quietly hired, station keepers responsible for feeding the horses, maintaining the buildings, and keeping the stations safe. The work was hard but satisfying. We patched roofs, reinforced stable doors, dug new wells, and built strong fences. Slowly, one by one, the stations came to life. The biggest challenge came when we reached the 2 old imperial forts. The first fort was named Eagle Fort and stood at the eastern edge of the Greenbelt Forest. It took us nearly 3 weeks to make habitable again. We cleared out decades of debris, repaired collapsed sections of wall, and turned the old barracks into living quarters for the men and stables for the horses. The second fort was an old log fort named Pony Fort. Further down the line in the middle of the eastern prairie was an even worse shape. But with more hands and better supplies, we managed to bring it back from ruin. At every station, we delivered horses. Carefully chosen animals were left at each stop. 4 horses per smaller station, 6 at the larger ones, and 8 at both forts. Watching the horses settle into their new homes made everything feel real. Brock was in his element. He loved racing between stations, delivering messages and supplies. Kane, true to form, kept careful records of every horse, every supply crate, and every coin spent. His organization kept the whole operation from falling into chaos. One evening, as we sat around a campfire near Pony Fort, my father looked down the long road towards Central City. "Multipal stations," he said quietly. 52 horses, 27 men hired, all of it done in just 10 weeks. He turned to me with a tired but proud smile. You actually built it, Rhett. The frontier line is real. I looked at the freshly repaired fort glowing in the firelight and felt something deep settle inside me. We had done it. Every station was stocked with grain and dried food for both horses and riders. Every stop had men who knew their job. The horses were healthy and ready. The route was complete. Brock raised his cup with a wild grin. To the frontier line. Kane actually smiled for once. I still think we're all a little insane, but I'll drink to that. I looked at my father, my two best friends, and the line we had just built together. The stations were ready. The horses were in place. Now all that remained was the first ride.
In 10 days flat. Pony Express rider, imagine that. Orphans preferred, the job had read. Mail that moved a nation, full speed ahead. Hostile territory, weather, wolves and more. Pony Express rider, knowing the score. Pony Express rider, mail that moved a nation. 18 months of thunder, no vacation. Pony Express rider, dedication. Buffalo Bill Cody rode these trails alone. Pony Express rider, far from home. Telegraph came and killed it overnight. Mail that moved the nation, lost the fight. Hostile territory, weather, wolves and more. Pony Express rider, knowing the score. Pony Express rider, mail that moved a nation. 18 months of thunder, no vacation. Pony Express rider, dedication. Hey. Only lasted 18 months before it died. Pony Express rider swallowed its pride. Telegraph wire stretched from shore to shore. Mail that moved a nation.